Hi, we are back for Vlog 8, Week 12, Perry Perry Perry, Intellectual and Ethical Development. Thank you, Danielle, for all your hard work throughout spring break. Um, your questions were spot on and great for our reading. Um, but before I jump into the questions, I just want to say some things that I saw throughout the reading, especially through the article about Perry's development. I mean theory. All I could think about was my institution at the College of Worcester. We were a liberal arts school, and we were very big on critical thinking in the whole process of learning. And I thought it was interesting because it's not just my institution that Worcester that does this, but it's a variation of institutions. Almost all institutions are very big on the learning process. And I don't think as a student you really understand that until like your junior senior year, which is the multiplistic and relativistic like state positions. And I just thought that that was very interesting. That this is probably one of the first theories that I really could see this happening and not it just being like forced. Um, so I thought that was interesting, and Perry did a good job from observing that all the way back in the 50s for it to be somewhat still relevant now in the 2000s or 21st century. So I thought that was kind of cool. Um, but the questions that Danielle asked was the first one was about the models or the critique of the model, and if this if Perry's theory was labeling students and if we should share this information with our students. Um, I think labels are inevitable. Unfortunately, I think we're in a society where labels help for people to understand things better. I'm not saying labels are good things, but they're there. I think that these labels, particularly from Perry, are more so for us as student affairs professionals more than they are for the students. So I wouldn't personally share it. I think the book does a good job of talking about what the labels are for. Like on page 97 in Evans, it says the basically like the knowledge that we get from this theory is for faculty and student affairs so that we can more effectively contribute to the students' learning processes. Learning and processing and development and critical thinking is difficult within itself. I don't think that we need to add on another label or another pressure from the outside for students to have this idea forming going. So I don't think that students should know if they are going into student affairs professionals, if they're in that field and they're just curious, like, hey, I ran across Perry and I want to know what level I'm at, I think then you can discuss that with them. But just out of the blue, if a student comes in your office and you see that they're kind of lacking in development, I don't think that that's our job to push that information on them. I think it's our job to help cultivate that environment and understand where they are and how we can help them get to that next level of development and not um, burdening them with the fact that they're stunted in growth. Because everybody learns and grows differently, and I don't think that that's something that another attribute that they have to think about. I just don't see the point of telling our students. Um, but the second question talked about the three positions of the Perry model that Evans kind of broke down. Before I start, I just think that it's hilarious that Evans and the colleagues throughout student affairs was like, Perry, your model was really long, so we're going to just shorten it to three different categories instead of listing every single one. Um, so dualistic, multiplistic, and relativistic were the three that the book condensed it to. Um, and me, I work in the Office of Social Equity, which I kind of foresee like the multicultural affairs, and that's how I kind of view it. But I personally don't see me getting students until they are at the multiplistic and relativistic positions. Um, I feel like dualistic positions are more in student organizations before they come to an actual office. And I guess my whole reservation or question mark about where I would actually see these students is because as the Office of Social Equity of a Multicultural Affairs office, like sometimes we, at least I don't necessarily fully understand what that office, how that office services students who aren't in student organizations geared to diversity, if that makes sense. And so figuring out what exactly my office does besides Title IX and student complaints, then I will be able to be like, oh, my dualistic student will be this, or my multiplistic student will be, and so on and so on. So, with that being said, I think that dualistic students, with the whole idea of there is some right, there is some wrong, and finding that balance, I feel like will go into a student organization, and then that leader of the student organization, like Lee was in the examples, would then come to me and as an advisor, and that's where I kind of see me playing. That's what my students will look like. My relationship with my students would be an advisor to a student relationship, and they wouldn't get to me until they were multiplistic or relativistic, and we would talk about the growth and how, and for example, of how as a leader, how can I help my first and second years, and how I can help them make decision making and how we can move on as a student organization. I would probably talk to more leaders than I would actual first year, second year students. But what I also thought was kind of cool and kind of would also be my students was in the article they talked about the whole idea of transfer of transitioning from what they want to a way of thinking. And I think that it's very accurate that when you first start off, it is, oh, I'm going to get a grade. I have to answer it a correct way, and actually understanding the whole process of how I'm learning and being able to translate from academic to a personal or personal life experience. If that makes sense. But yeah. Um, oh, the last thing, when you, the whole idea of like finding your department where you were like there's certain departments that aren't there and different things like that. The book kind of talks about the critique as well about how this study or the theory was developed in the 50s and 60s at Harvard, and now in the 21st century where education can be as simple as an online study or something as detailed as a four-year institution. So I just think as the education has developed, unfortunately, at least Perry from, I mean, I'm quite sure we'll see other versions of a Perry, but Perry is still, Perry's theory hasn't necessarily fully developed into the different types of students that we have now in the 21st century. Although there is a lot of overlap, and I think Perry does an excellent job, even from the 50s, to still even be relevant to today. I thought that was kind of cool. Like I said, like the whole critical analyzing and different things, and like institutions, like that's their mission, is to make sure the students understand that school is about critically thinking and analyzing different things like that. And I'm hurrying up because I've recorded this before and it's deleted, so I don't want it to delete again. But thanks, Danielle. These vlogs are great. I'll see you same time next week. Bye.